good morning. I don't know if it's morning where you are. It's always morning in my sunny life. It's a beautiful summer day, a little humid. I go out in the morning and I return out in the evening. The rest of the time I'm inside my apartment. If I'm not working and I'm reading or doing something else. And today I have a book that I thought was really special and really good for me to read. It might be good for you to read too. I don't know. Once again, I'm in the realm of nonfiction, and the book is Melinda Cooper, Family Values Between Neoliberalism and the New Social Conservatism. So, how prepared I am to speak about such a book, I'm not quite sure. I read the book, I got a lot out of the book. I didn't prepare notes to transfer any of this information or knowledge or anything else to you. So, you know how I do. I just kind of, if you've seen any of these things in the past, I just wing it. So we're gonna wing it while a doggy over on the side of me here is getting a nice haircut. A beautiful little doggy, actually, who's being very, very patient. And behind me is the Friends Meeting House, built in 1860, I think that's what it says. The Friends, the Quakers, they have a school right around the corner that probably costs $30,000 a year to go to. But, you know, the Quakers, Stuyvesant Park, which I've shot in before here in Lower Manhattan, and the book Family Values. Now, how do I talk about this book? Not really sure. It's like, you know, it's like a, you know, I'm just sort of an autodidact dude here. But you know, is anybody else going to review this on YouTube? Probably not. So I guess it's left to me. So between neoliberalism and the new social conservatism, what goes on in this book, which is actually a beautiful volume. It has notes. All this section in the back are you know, numbered notes for each chapter. Her references, where she gets the information. So the book is actually 316 pages long, and all this is notes and you know, a full index. You know, a real book that you don't often see anymore. I mean, I've read nonfiction books that seemed like they should have been indexed, but were not. I guess they didn't take the time or whatever. A squirrel climbing down the tree. Maybe he'll come up on the table and make a little appearance. So I think I'll just go chapter through chapter and see what I can remember and see if anything resonates with you. So the first chapter is called the same, Between Neoliberalism and the New Social Conservatism. What goes on here is basically thoughts about the American family kind of throughout the 20th century, at least from the Roosevelt, Franklin Delano Roosevelt New Deal era in through basically current times. It's from 2019, I believe, 2017. So it's kind of up to a minute ago about the social and political and economic issues that are going on in America, the US of A, and all the forces that are constantly at battle and at odds and helping one another, assisting one another, and it's a completely fascinating story about how all this works. And it's important to know how all this works if one wants to try to make some sort of change happen in a positive direction. I mean, we can't just assume that there is a progressive line that goes from the past into the future, that things get better and better and better and more free and more liberated and more sexually free and more economically equal and all these things, when in fact quite a bit of the opposite goes on a lot of the time. So and we see how one movement can affect and cause a reaction a few years later. So we look at the New Deal, and of course the New Deal was a fluke, really, as far as I'm concerned, in the story of America and American economics, American economic system, and its flirting with socialist ideas. Basically, whether the government has any business or can efficiently support the people, how social welfare movements sponsored by the government, welfare, Social Security, and things like that, healthcare. Did I say healthcare already? How they are at odds with a certain element of the rugged individualists of our culture. There's a strong American rugged individualist point of view that has always been in this country. I mean, who came over here when you had to come on a boat, you know, through steerage, whatever, get all your bucks together and take off on a very long and expensive voyage, of which you might not come back from and might not be able to bring the family over. These are the people who are, well, in a sense, either very, very desperate on the other side, or looking to gain for themselves, looking to be a rugged individualist, looking to come out here and strike gold and get rich, looking to build something for themselves and maybe their family. So there are these competing forces all through the 20th century of the family people who want to support the family and keep the family together with you know, things that go on with sexual politics and everything else that feels like it's threatening the family, as in like recent gay marriage and other things like that, and social programs like Social Security and welfare. So that's basically what it's going all about. The moral crisis of inflation, neoliberalism, neoconservatism, and the demise of the family wage. That's chapter 2. The family wage, which Melinda calls the Fordist model, I guess. She never really explains that, but I assume that means what came out of the Industrial Revolution and then the unionization of the Industrial Revolution that built the Ford, the factory worker idea of a family that can be supported by one wage that supports the rest of the family. So the family can remain intact, the woman, the wife, and the children can remain at home, and everything's nice and tidy within the family with this one wage. But it all starts cracking up when you know, issues like inflation come in, and the inflation actually harms the rich more than it does, well, people like me. What I get, as long as inflation isn't very extreme, what I get out of Social Security, for instance, other than where I work, what I get out of Social Security is geared to inflation. So if inflation goes up in a given year or so forth, Social Security is supposed to be adjusted to allow for this and therefore take up the slack and continues to support us. I think that did not come in until Richard Nixon, who was in a position to do a lot of interesting things and actually did some. The EPA, it's not covered in his book, he created the EPA. He was kind of, in a way, our last liberal president. Johnson did a whole lot, and the people who you think were on the side of us working folk, ended up being really not so much, and used their positions to basically do the agenda of the other side. So what I mean by that is, here we have Ronald Reagan rising up, Reaganism, and people fought against what he wanted to do, fought against a lot of the stuff he wanted to do, how he wanted to pull back welfare, how he wanted to rein in this and that for the sake of the economy and the rich people. And it ended up that Bill Clinton was the one that put in a lot of these things into action. So good old Bill Clinton, who ended welfare as we know it, and besides that, he's the one that started moving NATO further and further toward Russia, that brings us to the situation we're in now. So the ethics of family responsibility and the invention of the poor laws. It talks about these poor laws that were in I guess, Britain or whatever, and how the family is the main most important thing in that mindset of social responsibility, as opposed to family responsibility, which advances as we go along here. Inherited wealth and asset inflation and family economy. So inherited wealth, we hear in stories in this about how this and that person, politician, or tried to tax inherited wealth, but then the family values people say, wow, you're attacking the family, that this is the core of the family, to pass on what we worked so hard and earned to our family. Now, of course, now it's not, they don't actually work, so like does Bill Gates have children? Is his children working hard for what he's going to dump on them after he dies? I don't think so. It's people who grow entitled to these vast fortunes for basically doing nothing, while people like me, people like us, who might get a little bit of government money to sort of get by, are accused of being deadbeats, which is absurd and the opposite of what is really going on. So it all gets me quite excited, and that's what I'm saying. You read this book. She writes very clearly, very lucidly. It's an easy read. It's not complicated. She goes step by step. It's clear. It's just really an outstanding book, and actually, I give it absolutely my highest rating to Melinda Cooper's Family Values, and the beautiful cover, the beautiful packaging. I got it from the library. It had never been touched, I don't think. The book came to me and it felt brand new, and it still is pretty much brand new because I was, kind of gentle with it. So, it was not beat up at all for what, 6 years old. So, it kind of saddens me that something like this is sitting on the New York Public Library shelves and not being taken out and not being read, other than some old dude like me. Okay. So then, what do we do from here? Okay. Oh, the price of promiscuity. This was quite interesting as we get into the into what happened as a reaction to a lot of things that came out of the New Left and the second wave of women's liberation, which is basically people's liberation, and how this upset the family people and caused a reaction that brought a blowback, and it offered a something that the family values people could point at and say, look at this section, look at this, what's going on. We have gay people over here. We have marriage is falling apart. People don't stay married. They don't need to because the government's supporting them. All this kind of stuff that comes out of the neoliberals. And actually, this is how a lot of them, the liberal people who supported the New Deal, some of these Chicago school thinkers, economic school thinkers and so forth, switched out of that and turned into neoliberals and neoconservatives who are all about this economic stuff and stopping big government and supporting the family instead of individual freedom, things like that. So then it goes on to the local parentage. This was really interesting. This was all about colleges, student loans, tuition. Back in, even when I was growing up in Ohio, to go to a university in Ohio, I don't remember what it cost, like $300 for a term, because they were supported by federal and state funds that came out of ideas of Johnson and other people like that, who supported education and free education. And it was a beautiful thing that did a lot for a lot of people, and elevated a lot of working class people out of the working class. I didn't go for it myself. Maybe I should have. I'd be one of these boomers with their McMansions now, I guess. Okay, boomer. So it ended up that the student radicalism of the late 60s, mid to late 60s, starting with Ronald Reagan in California and the free speech movement, which with the Mario Salvo's free speech movement in Berkeley. I didn't quite know, what that was all about. It was really before my time, and I really didn't look into it. Vietnam was only just cooking up then. So it was, what it was they could see how the military-industrial complex was totally involved with the university, and how they were being all channeled into the military chemical business, all this stuff, and that's part of what the free speech movement was this kind of left-wing, anti-military thing. So, of course, in the news, we got this high-profile stuff of demonstrations, of eventually big occupations of buildings that, as it went on through the Vietnam era into like 1970, when I remember that in May of 1970, basically all the universities were closed down after we'd heard that Nixon was bombing Cambodia and therefore expanding the war in Vietnam. So, I mean, it was a heavy scene. So, but this caused a reaction from the right wing, and it fueled the ability for them to react and cause changes. And the changes that eventually went down was the defunding of the free university system. The Reagan stopped the universities from being funded by federal funds and said, okay, the states can handle it if they want to. The states didn't have the money because they were also being supported by federal funds. The federal funds, Reagan cut back but caused the biggest deficit ever at that time because of all the money he threw into the military-industrial complex, which is something else he doesn't really talk about so much in here, because all this time since World War II, the military-industrial complex has been growing and growing and growing and taking more and more of the wealth out of the country, which is essentially just wasted. This is one of my big points in all these things. I hate the military-industrial complex and how it is destroying the country, and in fact right now leading us into a confrontation with Russia that could cause a nuclear war. Russia attacked Ukraine to protect themselves from this continual encroachment of NATO and right-wing Nazi forces in the Ukraine. You don't believe that? Well, then don't. But you can find all kinds of people that will talk about it, like the great Glenn Greenwald, or Matt Taibbi, or Russell Brand, or any of these other alternative voices. Chris Hedges, who knows a lot about war. Scott Ritter, who will tell you what's exactly going on. So, leaving that all aside, what went on with the universities is that they went, yes, you can go to university, yes, anybody can go to university, but you're going to get all wrapped up in the personal debt system. And now, since then, the universities got more and more expensive, and the personal debt crisis grew and grew and grew. If you were poor and didn't have the money, no problem. You could put up your parents' house for collateral. You could pull your parents into it and pull them into it. They could put up their house, their property, their assets for collateral. Oh, and Joe Biden, while he was senator, and he's from a state that is completely run by the credit system, Delaware, where all the credit companies have their home offices because of their weird limited. There's over 2 million. There's like almost 2 million LLCs, limited liability corporations, registered to the state of Delaware, which is very easy for them to do. There's a new book written by a guy that I heard on Ralph Nader Radio Hour just days ago talking about this. It was just an amazing story. So what has happened and what is occurring now is that Biden made it, and other, senators and right-wingers, whatever, the people, the business community, the credit community, the lobbyists that own Congress, set it up so even if you go bankrupt, you are not, you can't bankrupt, you can't write off the student loans. And if you don't have the money and you do go bankrupt, they can garnish, take back your parents' Social Security to pay for your student loans, and presumably your Social Security if you live long enough to get it. So this is a really nauseating situation where, corporations and other big businesses or individuals who are protected with the shell corporations or whatever can walk away from their debt just like that when they want to. But you can't, because of Biden and the lobbyists of the credit banking companies and all that stuff. Oh, the final chapter is the theology of the social, the rise of faith-based welfare. So this is another thing that happened incrementally. I think I'll wait for the siren to go by. It's a ambulance. It says Mount Sinai on it. I wish them luck. The faith-based thing. Okay. So, welfare used to be distributed, and other funds went into various other nonprofits that were not connected to religion. Say maybe, well, not them. They are connected to religion, but there are various neighborhood organizations that could receive government funding to carry on their programs. Unfortunately, these were too liberal or too left-wing for the right-wingers, and they started to notice this, and it started to fall apart. And as they try to pull back the money that they want to give to the military instead of the people, so they ended up engineering a system that gave this to faith-based organizations again, to churches and so forth, like that, which is kind of an old model. When there's nothing else, religion is what is called upon to take care of people, and sometimes does it, and sometimes does a good job. This happens all over the world, like in Islamic countries. If the government's going to shit and not helping the people and not being good and all this stuff, there are Islamic religious organizations that take up the slack and support the people, and therefore also at the same time bring them into their religion. So the funding went from these secular organizations into these more religious organizations, and like Salvation Army, even in New York, which I didn't know. Apparently, a lot of the homeless housing was built and supported by some religious organizations, Catholic organizations, so forth. So, as well as issues around abortion and stuff like that. That also, Roe versus Wade and abortion, all that, it brought in a lot of changes. It brought, as she goes into here, there was a real rivalry and disconnect between a liberal church organization called the National Council of Churches that was very big in the 60s, and that started to fall apart around the time of the liberalization of Roe versus Wade. Roe versus Wade, the the Supreme Court ruling on Roe versus Wade was about privacy, personal privacy, what you can do with your own body. It did not necessarily legalize abortion, and as we see, it's falling apart or being torn apart since. So abortion was a very big issue that caused a coming together of traditional Catholics who've always been against birth control and now abortion, and the evangelicals. So this created an alliance of evangelicals and their more right-wing orientation, and the Catholic Church, which created a powerful bloc that also had ripple effects on other social programs and brought us to basically the situation we're in now. So, I know I haven't done this book justice. I don't know if I can do it any better. I think I'm going to have to think of a way to review these books, serious books like this, a little bit more thoroughly, because I have more coming up. Maybe I'll stop while I'm reading it and do a little clip, and then put them all together so I can remember what I think is important, what I want to tell you about each book when it's a book of all these facts and all this information that is really important for us to know, because we're not being told really what's being going on by the mainstream news. The mainstream news is not really mainstream. It's the voice of corporate business, basically, and it's about their interests. And if you look at the news, if you look at your CNN or even Tucker Carlson pointed out, look at your Fox, what do you see? You see ads for pharmaceuticals, 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 pharmaceuticals. So you're not going to hear any sort of criticism about pharmaceutical companies in these mainstream corporate news companies. So that's it. Melinda Cooper, Family Values, really excellent book. Find it, go out to a library, read it. I don't know if there's an audio book, but good stuff. Thank you for watching. Subscribe if you feel like it. I really appreciate people watching. Thank you.